This is Brad Montgomery. Welcome to the Successful, Interesting, and Awesome podcast, where I interview people who are, wait for it, successful, interesting, and awesome. Or at least one of those three. Looking good. I've missed you. You look surprisingly together, knowing what you've been through. Well, my name is Brad Montgomery. This is a podcast called Successful, Interesting, and Awesome. And I met a very cool woman a while back. I was really lucky to be a keynote speaker at ACMA. I just had to double check to see if I got that right. And I met their president. It was such a lucky thing because the idea was I needed to learn about this industry of case management. And I'm like, medical case management, what is that? And everybody I talked to said, you need to talk to this rock star named Pam Andrews. And she coached me then, and I kind of thought, well, this woman is amazing. I need to get her on the podcast. And she said yes. So please welcome, listen to this, people, Pamela Andrews, RN, MSW, MBA, CMAC, CCM, ACMA, RN. Okie dokie. Pam Andrews is in the house. Hello, Pam.
Hi, Brad. How are ya?
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you said yes, because you just tickled me. I kind of felt like we bonded in person, like little spirit animals. But also, you have good stories about this job that I think most of us don't know anything about. So I thought we need to let the world know about your job and that industry. But the world needs to know you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time when we met, and even prior to, because we got to talk a little bit, so I could share a few stories about the world of a case manager.
Well, you did such a good job with me. I am going to ask you about what the heck a case manager is, but I'm asking you first about your education, because you heard all those letters I just said after your name. When you were a little girl, I'm pretty sure you never thought you would have all of those letters. How in the what happened? You're amazing.
Well, the letters are great, but it's really what the learning is behind those letters, because those allow me to enter a space and serve others the best way I can. So, I know there are a lot of letters, and they do hang on the end of my name and make me look very interesting, but it's really, really the ideology and philosophies around behind the learning.
That sounds like a textbook answer. That's that's what all successful people, they're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's really just what's inside. I'm going to fix my camera. I'm out a little focus. Tell me a little bit about your family. Did they also come from these hyper educated backgrounds?
Actually, no, no, no. My parents are from the South. My dad actually was a, a police officer, DC police officer for 21 years.
Mm.
He's also a veteran. Was in the Vietnam War, and my mom, she worked in government for years. So we lived in the Washington D.C. area most of my life. That's where I grew up, and they were just, both parents working and supporting me and my sister. I have a sister, a younger sister. So,
So it sounds like no college for your dad. How about your mom?
no, no, she did not attend college. Actually, she got married when she was very young.
How young?
so, so, I think, she was early 20s or even earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so you're one of these magical first generation graduates.
Yeah, I do have cousins that, of course, also pursued higher education, and most of our lineage going forward, that's the norm for them. But yeah, one of the first of our generations.
Are your parents still around?
Yes, both of them. And they're both around. Actually, they met me in Orlando when and hung out a little bit after the ACMA conference. So that was great.
Well, I know they must be very proud of you. So a lot of times, so Pam Andrews, among other things, is the president of a massive organization, the Association of Case Managers, American Association of Case. No, what is it? American Case Management Association.
You got it. You
Did I get
got
that?
it.
Sometimes you might know that if you are a president of an association, they arrange for you to have a big suite at these conference hotels. Is that what happened for you?
um, my accommodations are good.
Was it, in fact, the presidential suite?
It was not.
Well, what I'm wondering is if you had enough room to just bring your parents in.
Oh no, I met them afterwards. So
Oh,
I
oh,
had
okay.
left the hotel. Yeah,
Oh,
no, they
dang
didn't
it.
join me there. They joined me in a private home actually
All right. Well, oh,
afterwards.
that's cool. But there's something kind of cool. I think our parents don't often know what we do professionally, and for them to have seen you at that conference where you're top of the pile. No one's topper of the piler than Pam Andrews.
Well, I don't know about that, but I am currently president. But there is also a CEO.
Is the CEO? That's the professional staff. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, that's Greg Cunningham is the
Right,
CEO
right.
of
So
the
they
American Case Management
organizations
Association.
like yours usually have a professional staff that is the bureaucratic memory, and then they have
Abs
volunteers because they
well,
need people like you who are in the industry to lead it. Well, let's talk about how in the world a little cute little girl with two parents in DC grew up and said, "I guess case management is my thing." How did that happen?
I think, it probably wasn't what I designed myself early on, right? I was always interested in healthcare. And very early, in high school, even, I worked at local nursing homes, supporting patients. And again, wasn't sure exactly. It was a great job that I could do while in school on the weekends. And then it just translated into a great job I can do as I was in college as well. So it was just an opportunity that blossomed into a desire to continue to serve people.
Well, I know you're a registered nurse. Is that where that came from? You were working in nursing homes and thought, "Oh, the next step is clear for me."
Actually, no, actually, my first degree was in social work. So my desire was to work in community, work in hospitals, supporting patients as they move through or even needing support in the community as a social worker. And as a social worker, I started to work for a health system and I started to learn more about the clinical aspects and needs of a patient and thought, why don't I go back to nursing school? So I was actually had my master's in social work and decided to return to school and obtain my nursing degree.
And your friend said, "Pam's gone off the board, off the rails. She's going back to school."
Uh, yeah, because the goal, I was actually director of case management at one of our hospitals, and the goal was to just do my job better
Hmm.
based on the learning. It wasn't to pursue another role. It wasn't to become a direct clinician. It was to do the role of care management better.
Okay, so I think there are some people out there like me who think I've never once been that type of a good do-gooder. Meaning, you are joining so first social work, which is not, that's the opposite of I'm going to go work Wall Street, um,
Right.
right? And then you turn social work and like, oh, I want to be of service in a different way, so now I'm going to be learn nursing. Is that something your family taught you that you were, that you're kind of focused on others with your job choices?
Well, my absolutely, my family, my dad, he's a service worker, being a police officer, right? And he saw the ails of communities through his work, and he and my mom instilled the importance of giving to others and being available to support others. So it absolutely was rooted foundationally in family. And then we also were surrounded by church community that did the same. And that community was full of educators. And so the importance of education reigned true in that regard as well. So it was a combination of a number of interactions within my childhood, my parents' social circle, who they had us around, what they had us experience. All of those things played a huge part in, what I've chosen to do and, how I've pursued it as well.
Well, I'm very interested, as you know, in how we get mentored and influenced and supported. And you dropped a couple hints in there. You
Mhm.
mentioned your church community and also the adults your parents had around.
Mhm.
So tell me more about that. Are these people that are they the ones that pushed you into college, or what?
No,
What
oh,
was
my
that all about?
parents. Yeah, oh, my parents were, of course, the number one professors of continuing education. And then in our circle, even from everything from our Sunday school teachers to, we were always surrounded by professors or by, educators. My best friend's mom is an educator. I mean, close family. Friends, husbands and wives are both educators. So understanding first, who we are and the ability to, if you have access to information and access to, higher education, if it's available to you, we were taught to take advantage. And even if it wasn't accessible, we'll find a way. And you had people to support you with the access if it wasn't readily available to you.
Yeah, I'm listening. And it doesn't seem that easy for because I am not a first generation graduate. Forget my cousins and your cousins. Sorry, cousin. I'm sure you're a lovely person. But so I don't really know what it's like. I feel like I was brainwashed from birth that, of course, you're going to college. But
Yeah.
something about your family made that feel important. And I don't think it's that obvious that, oh, it did. Like, what is that magic
You
missing link?
know,
Because not all families have that.
I couldn't sit and have this conversation without bringing into the cultural aspect of this, right? The need to pursue in order to obtain and be in a place where you can support others, right? It takes a village. We all, that's often a terminology used within our culture, and I'm sure throughout many cultures. I mean, everyone stands on someone's shoulders. And it was very important to our social network that we all were taken care of. And if that meant ensuring and supporting access to higher education, whether it meant other types of support in community, those things were worked to make available to us. As well as, learning, we did a lot of things that supported us, that support me to this day, like, a lot of oratory contests, things of that nature, speaking engagements. I grew up learning history and then performing it on stage in front of audiences through my church community. So once you kind of have people behind you pushing you in front, it's hard to not
Yeah.
be in position to do those things.
Okay, I know we've got to get the case management, but I am dying to hear how your church pushed you into a history performance. There is nothing about that that's obvious. Well, tell me the story.
Well, I mean, we had a youth club, right? Through my church, which had our parents, the adult parents, the educators of the world, the musicians, and we had writers, and we had a play we put on every year called Portrayal in Black. Um, so my someone who has been so instrumental in where I sit today, Frances E. Smith. She's no longer with us, but she was the ultimate educator and someone who positioned us to show up and show up well. So she invested in us, along with our parents and our parental network. Invested in us, and here's the result. I sit here as a product of that investment.
I'm assuming Frances Smith was proud of you and would be proud of you still if she was with us. So, who was she in your life? Was she a church person?
She was actually my choir director, and she was family choir director, educator, writer, director.
Hmm.
She directed the plays. So she was all of those things.
Did you
All of
stay in
those
touch
things.
with her? So, you had her in youth group or youth club. Did you stay in touch with her?
Well, over time, I mean, as long as she was available and physically able, she was within the church. And I still go to the same church today. So we still have those connections. Um, but yeah, she has passed on, but she has left a great legacy. Not just me. There are a ton of us that have been influenced and impacted by the life of Francis E. Smith.
Well, can you give me an example? Because this is my favorite, Pam. What did Frances E. Smith do for you? I'm sure there's got to be some
Uh,
memory of that, or was it just
well,
general stability and love?
she did a lot. You know, there's a way to present and show up and even tell a story. And she helped us tell the story of people of our past and in our history. Um, I portrayed Charlotte Hawkins Brown, who is a teacher, and I had to memorize those lines, and we're talking like 3-4 pages.
Mm.
And we had to go on stage and present the life from their point of view.
Oh,
So it would
cool.
start out, I am Charlotte Hawkins Brown. And then you go on into the story of who she was, and we'd be dressed for the period in
Hmm.
which they lived. So we had a ton of costume artists, and Miss Piper actually did our costumes. So, it was just a magical time. It was tough
Do you remember more lines
because
from Charlotte?
I don't. I'm trying to sit here and think about it, but I don't. I wish I have to go back and kind of find that information because now you have me thinking about that time. But that was over, my gosh. Wow. It was over 20. It was a long time ago.
Well, I can remember in second grade, I we did a play about pronouns, and I
Oh.
had the pronoun for, F-O-R. For you, for me, forevermore. For is a word we can't ignore. Boom! Mic drop.
Yeah, Brad, you're good.
Second grade. All right, so tell me again the name
Awesome.
of this history series. It was the Black Experience, or what was it?
The portrayal in black.
Portrayal
So
in
there were
Black.
a number, yeah. So all of our historians, everyone, Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, Nanny Helen Burroughs, just a number of figures that played a significant role in the African American experience, and we had the privilege of, sharing their life story. And we did that in our church and in other communities. We would go around and perform. So it was a great, great time. And it taught us so much. Even if in that moment it was just hard and you were fearful of not remembering your lines
Yeah,
because yeah.
I think those are big moments. All right, so I'm hoping we have time because I kind of want to come back to this a little bit. But
Sure.
you are now a rock star case manager. You work for an organization called Inova, which is huge. What in the world is a case manager, and what's that all about? When you meet somebody at a cocktail party,
Yeah,
they must be
sometimes
like me and say, "I don't know what that is."
yeah, it's not one of those roles that automatically come into familiarity when you mention what you do. It is a pivotal role, and it's almost probably easier to speak to what it's not. But I'm going to try and talk about, share what it is. It is a role that can be held by an individual. They could be a clinical. We, as our organization, defines the role as a clinical role held by a social worker and/or nurse that works within the hospital system and or outside the hospital in physicians' offices, ambulatory spaces, clinics, outpatient offices to support transitions of care. So, and transitions of care means everything from access, how do people get access to
Right.
healthcare, to moving between levels of care. Say, if you're in an inpatient in a hospital setting and you're leaving that setting and you're trying to connect with community services, it's also a role that communicates with the payer population. So, insurance companies, we have a role in communicating medical and clinical information to support revenue cycle for hospital systems. So, we're probably a constant resource that supports patients, primarily moving through and navigating healthcare services at every level. There's a lot of things within those lines that we care for and take care of, but our primary goal is to support patients where they are and to help them move through health systems based on their priorities and what their clinical needs are. So, my organization is doing amazing work in terms of determining what matters most to our patients. And with the what matters most, also trying to support patients with things that may not even be clinically defined. So those things that impact patients' health that are not a clinical diagnosis. And I'll say, if you've heard the terminology, social determinants of health, those things that impact your health that are not related to your clinical diagnosis. And that's the basics:
Right.
food, transportation, how people are able to access services. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
it's a
reminds me
lot.
a little bit, Pam, of the thing we hear about in education for our kids, which is the whole child, right? You
Yes,
can't just teach them math if they're
right,
hungry. You got to think about the
right,
whole kid. And
right.
I'm thinking maybe that's a metaphor for you, that you can't just fix their busted toe if they're homeless and hungry and have a abscess in their mouth.
You got it, Brad. You got it. That's
What?
exactly what
That
it
might be my
is.
first time, yo.
You
All right.
got it.
Well, this concept was a little unclear to me, and then you told me a story about a diabetic. Would you be willing, Pam Andrews, rock star, case manager, to tell us that story? Because it was mind blowing.
Well, it kind of aligns with it aligns with our care imperatives and what matters most. So it's very difficult to support a patient and set up services for them if they're worried about something else, right? Something else is a priority for them. And I think I shared with you the story about a patient who had been hospitalized due to his instability with his ailment and caring for himself. He lived alone. Well, not really. He had a pet cat, and he had been hospitalized because he needed some acute care management and had a number of diagnoses, including diabetes. But he'd been in the hospital for a while and therefore needed rehab services. So the recommendation was rehab. We all, supported him and wanting and shared with him that is the recommendation. But he was concerned that his cat had already been home for an extended period of time and really wanted to get back home to his cat. So the case managers at the facility thought about it and thought about what was most important to this patient and decided to intervene in a way that probably is not what people normally think we would do. And so what ended up happening, they made arrangements for to get support to get the cat picked up by our local police department, non-emergency, promise. We got permission to do that, and we worked with the local animal shelter to care for the cat so we could support the patient with going to rehab services and not being concerned that his cat would not be cared for. So that's just one in a million stories. And
Yeah.
it's not, I don't think it's unique to our organization and team. I think this is something that's embedded in what care management, case management does across the country. Those stories that not many people think about, know about, or even would imagine is what sometimes we find ourselves
Well,
doing. And of course,
yeah.
it's supported by a whole host of clinicians and physicians. And, we don't do anything alone. We always have supportive partners when we're working with our patients.
That's that leadership thing you've got. Always deflecting. Yeah, I was great, but mostly it's the other people. All right, so but that just kills me. I love that example because I can't imagine any person taking a job in a hospital system imagines one day I'm going to be calling an animal shelter and saying, I don't know what to do with a cat. Right? Can you? I don't. Could you? Would you take a cat, but not kill him? Right. And then to think that that's part of your thing, and imagine that when you take those jobs as nurses or social workers, that you're going to be calling the cops, asking them to go get the cat. That I love that. But also, I see the bottom line thing. I'm guessing, and this is really a question. I'm guessing the problem we're fixing is not only trying to keep this guy okay, but it's a medical problem. If he goes home and he's not ready, he's going to bounce back to the hospital. So that's not good for him, but also it affects the bottom line of the hospital and all of your metrics. So that's not just good generally. So if the question is how do we get him from bouncing back, it means someone's calling the flipping animal shelter. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, quality always reduces cost. So, however, you get to quality and engagement for patients and families, the outcome is that ultimately, but the focus is how do I meet this patient or person where they are and help them with me determine what we can do together. So what mattered most to that gentleman was he did not want to lose his cat. He
Right.
didn't want to be away from him, and he agreed to be away from him because we were able to support caring for the cat. And yes, ultimately, it reduced the risk of him going home and falling. It reduced the risk of him having to return to a hospital setting. But our goal in that moment was to serve that individual. And this is the way we chose to do it. But all the other stuff, absolutely a win in every way.
All right, you touched on something there. When I'm when I'm asked to come in to speak to organizations, I'm usually talking about soft skills and people skills and some of what you're talking about, just being there for other people and being supportive and helpful. And it seems like there's two camps of people considering this concept for a corporation. Some of them are saying, let's do that because it drives bottom line growth. And then there's other people who says, well, yeah, that's a nice side effect, but really it's just, that's just how you are a good person. And then back to you, you're saying, like with this man, we just want to treat that man and do what is best for him. And then the side effect is, oh yeah, that's good for our bottom line and our metrics. Are there arguments within in healthcare about from like the bean counters and the social workers saying, let's do it because it's good. And the bean counter saying, yeah, but let's do it because it's profitable.
Well, there's always a balance, right? You can't have a mission without a margin. That's why I also went and got my MBA, right? You got to understand the economics of this work as well. So you're right. There are those discussions. I mean, that's the only way that you have a thriving, viable business that is around and available to serve people and potentially larger numbers of people, right? So there are those conversations. I mean, we do have to be mindful of resource allocation and management. We have to. Everyone does. We have to be physically responsible, but we do believe there's a direct correlation with serving our community and serving our patients as individuals and meeting them where they are, that will equal and translate to those quality outcomes because they trust us and they will probably follow the plan that we support them with,
Right.
which should lead to a better outcome. So it's always going to be a part of the conversation. There's no way that you can't have that both dynamics at the
Yeah.
table.
I just love that concept that sometimes being a good person is also being selfish. Sometimes treating people as people in your hospital system is also either saves money or makes money. That's like a little magic. Oh, all right. So, I just had a conversation with a client that I'm about to speak with. They are rural healthcare in Western Virginia, near Roanoke, and they mentioned their population is tends to be just underserved, but also they have fewer resources. They have less education. They have less dollars. They're a little bit more intimidated by people in lab coats. And they implied to me that that means the need for case manager is greater with that population. Am I onto something? Does case management become even more valuable with those, I don't know the right word, populations with less dough?
Absolutely. I think um, the less you have access, I mean, whether it is the right access to food due to food deserts and the types of food that are accessible and available to you, the less you have access to transportation in order to get to a place, you're going to probably utilize 911 to access services and not have a routine access to a provider, and therefore you'll probably wait longer and your health will deteriorate because
Mhm.
you're not connected. Case manager is a connector. You know, we work to find access to resources and connect persons to programs that are developed to serve those who are identified as underserved. So, and it's not an easy thing to access or find. So the average person would may not know that this church on the corner or 10, 20 miles away offers food baskets on Saturday morning, and here's how we can get you there and back for so you're there to pick up that food basket, because we know based on your risk this will support your health. So absolutely right. It's more complicated to navigate if you don't, first of all, if there's an education and or a socioeconomic deficit that you're also trying to manage. I mean, your priority, if you are in that space, is probably trying to keep a roof over your head and food. That food doesn't necessarily may not be the best food, but it's what's available to you. So having a resource, someone who knows community resources, who knows how to access them, everything from criteria to meet, you know, to be
Right.
eligible versus all of that, and gathering information. A case manager is an asset in every way.
I'm sold. I think all of us want a case manager, right? You guys are superheroes. You're the one, because all of us, regardless of your situation, all of us are intimidated and overwhelmed by the health system. So having, I'd love to have you say, like, Brad, go over there and ask that guy for this, and he'll give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can serve all. It's just a matter of, you know, how much, right? Someone may just need me to point them in a certain direction, but someone may need me to hold their hand and walk them over. So
I,
it's
w-
everything in between.
I want that. So, Pam, knowing your expertise, does that mean all of your network, your church buddies, your family, your neighbors, they ask you like, ask Pam, she knows everything. Does that happen?
Sometimes that happens, yes.
Like, what's a typical question a neighbor or somebody at a barbecue asks you?
Well, of course, during COVID, it was like, what's going on? What about, you know, they wanted to know, you know, how things were going,
Mm,
you know, and what should they do? Should they, you know, should they get the vaccine
mm,
or not? So all kinds of questions. And then whenever someone finds themselves needing some form of support, whether it's a family member having surgery or someone going into the hospital, they'll ask questions about services following a hospitalization, and or do you know an orthopedic surgeon, or do you
mm.
know who should I go to for this? So, and then some of the common questions like, what should I do for this? My toe hurts, or do you think I should? So it
So
runs the gamut.
you have that double whammy where one, you're a nurse. So everyone likes to have a nurse that's a buddy. But then also you're this connected nurse. You know who knows everything, right? You know where
I
the services
I
are.
Yes, and then I have others who know where more services are. So I have this huge network, including ACMA,
Right.
right?
I know a
So
guy.
across the country, yeah, across the country, I have the benefit of several colleagues that I could turn to.
Yeah. Well, I saw how popular you were at ACMA, so I know your network is strong. We're going a little longer than I thought. Are you okay on time?
Yeah, okay.
You told me early on, including Miss Francis, that you've had some people that were instrumental in helping you to get to where you are now. I sense that you do this for others. Are you a formal mentor for others, or how does mentoring work for you?
Well, I have the privilege. Actually, I do. I've actually been in a mentor mentee relationship for a few years. I connect with one of my colleagues who I met through ACMA, was going through an MBA program and asked me to do some work with her about 5 years ago. And that work required us to meet on a weekly basis. And we've continued to meet since that time. I mean, we do it every other week now, so not as often, but it kind of goes back and forth. We mentor each other. So sometimes it's me she hears and supports, and sometimes it's me, it's switched. So there's great value in having this objective individual who also is invested in you. So I do have that relationship. And then I have several young people who lean in with me. And so I have regular connections with them. Most in industry, but then I have some who are not. So that's really cool to you know, um, support individuals who are in different lines of work, because that I get to learn as well while I'm sharing with them thoughts. And it's really a great opportunity, because every time you get the opportunity to sit with someone and share and hear, you always gain. And you may not even know. Someone they reach out to me, hey, can I come talk to you? I heard that, and I'm like, sure. And it ends up that what they were seeking from me, I actually got from them, and I wasn't even seeking it.
Mm.
So it's a benefit. I mean, I get the benefit of all of it. So it's great. What it costs me is time, and the time is there's great value in it.
Yeah.
So there's no loss on me.
My most recent guest on this podcast, Pam, also a rock star leader. In her case, not healthcare, corporate America, and she felt a greater. I think I'm not sure how to I'm not sure how to articulate it. She had a greater need to mentor because she felt like she is a woman and she made it, and there were not enough women in leadership at her company. And by golly, she was going to do her part. So she works specifically to mentor women. Do you feel some of that pull?
I do, but I also had some young men who have reached out to me. And I will say to you, you know, the natural gravitation of some of the folks that come to me is because I'm African American, and they want to experience me or ask me about my experience in the role that I play today. But I will also say that there are a number of others who uh, reach out to hear, to learn. And I will say myself, my mentors are so diverse within my organization, which I've been there for 21 years. So my ability to grow as a leader has been supported by, a number of leaders, and I've greatly appreciated their perspectives, their guidance, their feedback. And again, they were of all roles, all ethnicities, all, it's just, there are so many commonalities between people in this space that there was always great alignment and great learning, and it was just a matter of them having time and them taking time, right, to
Yeah.
want to share. So I've had the benefit of a lot of folks say.
Well, so you said, I think one of the things you said was it's not just my sex, it's my race also. I'm thinking
Mhm.
one of the things that you have ended up by accident is just being a rock star role model. Like, look at me. The numbers are not great, but I'm one of them. You can do it. Im- Does that give you pressure?
um there's always you know there's always pressure in terms of how you're seen, or how, but you know what, this is who I am. So it's I just show up as me, flaws and all. And I'll say, oh, um things aren't showing up the way they should today. And it's really hard sometimes because you are it's hard. I think we're harder on ourselves, and I know that at times I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not where I want, or this didn't turn out the way that I want. But I'm trying to learn to give myself grace as we give others grace.
Right.
But of course, you want to show up well, Brad. Of course, I
Yeah,
want.
but I'm asking a slightly different question. And forgive me, and you have perfect right to say, Brad, I don't want to talk about that. I'm just saying, whatever I have achieved, I am not a role model for straight white guys because there's plenty of straight white guys. Right?
Mhm,
So I don't have any baggage of people asking me to
mhm,
represent anybody.
mhm,
But I'm guessing as a very successful black woman in healthcare, you are kind of put in a place where either you were asked or just are a kind of a role model in a way that straight middle-aged white guys are not. And I'm curious if that gives you a uncomfortable pressure that I wouldn't have experienced that.
Yeah, no, you know what? I There is, of course, pressure to do well and to show up well and to be a role model for others, because sometimes we're not always at the table. I've been at the table um, as the only minority at the table on a number of occasions. It's absolutely changing, and there's a great appreciation for that. But yeah, it is a responsibility, and there is pressure with that because you want to, again, represent well. I think even with being the president of ACMA, and uh, that that's a huge seat to fill, and to be who I am and be on that stage in that seat. It is important for me
Yeah.
to represent the organization well as others who are watching the organization and seeing me at the head of the table.
Your parents must be so proud.
They think I'm all right.
I'll bet they do. So,
They think I'm all right.
well, I am so impressed by you, and I'm so grateful to you. Um, I think you said it all when you kind of said, well, I just show up and I'm me, imperfections and all. And I think in that ability to be yourself is, and even to acknowledge some weaknesses is what makes you so completely strong, because you're irresistible and you're bright and you're clever. And I'm so glad you're here. All right. So we're at that place, Miss Pam Andrews, where I ask every guest the very same question. So we are here. We have Pam Andrews. You are a nurse. You are a social worker. You are a master of business administration. You're a vice president, enterprise care management at Innova Health System. You're the president of ACMA. You are a rock star case manager. What gives you hope?
The world is huge and it's hard. And even with that, the faith of knowing my faith is my grounder, right? So my spiritual belief, my faith, grounds me, and it allows me to believe in people. And we are here to serve each other, and that's what gives me hope. My faith gives me hope. I don't think for me, without faith, it's difficult to hope, especially with facing all we're facing every day as we enter the world. So for me, that's what I stand in.
Your faith helps you believe in people.
Absolutely, because it is that faith that has me trust and hope that everyone, there is an ability for everyone to be recognized and to be forgiven, and to, just do things you never imagined they would do. People show up every day for other people. And it's through that understanding that we're all here and all have the ability and access to have a faith and God, access to God, essentially.
Good answer. Well, one of the things that gives me hope is that we were talking a little bit about race, and we're definitely talking about healthcare, and we're talking about mentoring, and knowing that there's a Pam Andrews out there making a difference in tangible and specific ways every day makes me feel no end of hope. Thank you. All right, you're a rock star. Pam Andrews, Innova got lucky when they found you. You are the right person in the right job. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Brad. This was fun. Thank you so much.
Hold with me, Pam. Thanks, everybody. Keep washing your hands. I told you were going to like that interview. I like so many things about Pam Andrews, but I think one of the things that really strikes me with her is she's just a very good person. She is a good person, not because of bottom line metrics, not because she's pressured to, get these many patients through there, or to save this much money here, or make that profit there. She's just doing a good thing. And she's gone way out of her way to be a social worker and a nurse and now an MBA. She goes out of her way to help people, and that is where she leads. That's where her heart is. But I also love just the fact that it's completely consistent with business and bottom lines. She knows that by serving these patients in the way she and her case managing buddies do, we are also saving our healthcare systems money, and we are helping them make money. And that's important, because if you can't keep the doors open, you can't keep doing well. She's humble, isn't she? And she's smart and she's clever. She has every reason to stand on this podcast and just brag and say, look at me, but that's just not who she is. But dang it, she's a rock star, isn't she? All right, thank you. Would you do me a favor and help me get the word out? Go to Apple Podcasts and hit subscribe and leave a comment. That really helps me. Share this on social media. It really helps me. It's been a fun ride. I really appreciate your comments. I've got new clients because of this. Thank you. But I'd also, of course, like to get the word out further. So if you don't mind helping me, that means a lot. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great week.